back to the Mind Body Food TV and podcast show. My name is Vicky. I'm so happy that you are joining me again for another brilliant episode of fantastic discussion about the mind, body, and how food and stress impact that relationship. Today I have a lovely guest with me. Her name is Elena. She is owner of Eat Nutrition. She is a self-acceptance and body love coach. And today we're going to be talking about the link between abuse and body image. A very, very important and fascinating topic. So welcome, Elena. I'm so grateful that you are taking this time to have this conversation with me and share with all of the watching people and listeners.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Hi, everyone. It's such an honor to be here. I can't tell you how excited I am.
Yay! So, Elena, for everybody watching or listening, can you start off with telling us a little bit about your background and what's actually led you to become a self-acceptance and body love coach in the work that you do now?
Well, cutting the long story short, I suffered with binge eating for over 14 years. So basically, I was in a constant struggle to constantly change the shape of my body. And I couldn't figure out, what was the reason behind it. I was abusing myself through diets, through exercise, and it all got to the stage where I just kept seeking that kind of, outside approval for what my body should look like. And every time when I thought that I've reached it, I decided that I need to change it again. So about 3 years ago, when everything just went downhill and I realized that I could no longer live my life that way, I actually sought the help of a therapist because now, dieting or over-exercising put aside, it got to the stage where I was suffering from panic attacks. I, started going through a stage where I was smashing things, everything, just my anger management towards objects, not towards other people, luckily, went completely out of control. And I knew that, this was a time when I had to change my life. So with the help of a therapist, I actually discovered a suppressed childhood memory of an abuse by my father that started at the age of approximately when I was around 5 to, my early teens. And as horrible as that was at the time, this was the one thing that actually was kind of like, a light that was like, wow, there is a reason why I've been doing all those kind of things. And I'm not going to lie, it was one of the hardest moments of my life, but it was one of the most incredible ones because now I had an answer to everything. And that meant that, I can now rebuild my life and work on actually accepting myself for who I am and accepting things that happen to me. And but basically, I've been working with women as a personal trainer and a coach. And what I unfortunately found was that there were a lot of similarities between, my clients and what I had experienced. And the unfortunate statistic is that around 25% of women have been abused in their lifetime. And this is just the statistic that we are aware of. It's not the statistics of women who are still to raise their voice. And the more I realized that, the more I worked with women, the more I realized that having a difficult relationship with loved ones around us creates a very negative relationship with our bodies and our minds. So hence why I made it my life mission to help women who are going through something similar in their life and helping them find the answers as to, why they're doing what they're doing.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure that is going to be very helpful for some women who have maybe recently discovered some memories of their own or who have already been aware of them but are still struggling. Mm-hmm. I think whether we discover a suppressed memory or we're carrying something with us that we just can't shake, even though we might be somewhat aware of it, but it's hidden there in the subconscious mind, and it's getting in the way of our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors that are unhealthy, self-sabotaging, and perhaps destructive to objects or to relationships or to other things that might make us focus more on what we look like. A lot of that comes down to some core limiting beliefs, some being I'm not worthy, some being I'm unlovable, some being I'm too much, I wish I was something else. Did you, throughout that process of actually getting an answer and understanding what the motivation was for you to beat on yourself and struggle so much with your body, did you discover what that limiting belief was for you?
I would say that it probably wasn't just one. You know, there were actually quite a few. I think one of them was I'm not good enough, and that was something that was, you know, ingrained in my mind, because I think it was part of me that always felt that there should be something extra that I need to give in order to be accepted. You know, in this case, with my relationship with my dad, it was, you know, the sexual favors, you know, if I can say that I was supposed to give as part of my proving my love towards him. So for me, that was like, okay, so I'm not good enough for who I was, what I was, without the added, you know, extras to it. So I had to add something to that. So that was a very big part of my life. And, you know, it manifested itself in many other aspects. It didn't matter what I was doing. I've always, even if people pay me a simple compliment, I would always feel like, not really, you know, I don't really deserve that. And I think that was actually probably the biggest one of the biggest limiting beliefs that I've had. The other one was that, I don't know whether it's a limiting belief per se, but it was more about how I was seeing my body, using my body as a shield. So in terms of like, what I would do is I would try to change the shape of my body. Like when I started, it was all about dieting, like trying to find something that will make me, well, in a way, like more attractive, because I wanted to look good. But once I led to that point, I didn't want to be attractive anymore. I wanted to be less attractive because I didn't want to be seen just as a pure target for, you know, for someone to take sexual advantage of. So that would be my other limiting belief. And it was, you know, it was a hard thing to differentiate. It was a hard thing to put, you know, a stop to, because when it's something that, you know, you've spent all your life believing in and accepting that as a truth, it was a really hard path to take.
Very confronting. Part of, I think, when people are employing diets or exercise or other means of controlling their weight, changing their body to become healthier, slimmer, more attractive, sometimes when they actually attain that and they start feeling more attractive, sometimes there's two things that happen. Sometimes the mind doesn't really catch up to the fact that the body's actually changed and it's different. So you still view or perceive yourself as the same kind of person, because essentially you are, but the physical aspects of you have changed. They've become smaller and different. And the other aspect that can often occur is when people actually get to that lower weight, more people notice. The external world starts to sit up and take notice. And I think a lot of people are not ready for that. A lot of people, because they're often still struggling to reconcile their self-image with the reality of their body's change. Sometimes that brings on a lot of fear that, oh my God, I'm getting a lot of attention that I don't want. And sometimes that can actually be a form of self-sabotage for people to put weight back on. And other times it can manifest in different ways of how their behavior might change to try and accommodate the feelings that are very uncomfortable that suddenly people are taking note. So what was that like for you? I imagine that would have been slightly different for you in the fact that it was perhaps making you feel attractive when you didn't want to, because there was that belief that I'm not enough, or I'm not deserving of this attention, or I don't want this attention.
Yeah. I think what you said is right on point, because I remember a situation where it was a part of my life where I had lost a lot of weight, and I mean, like a lot for my body frame. That I was really skinny, but I was proud. It was proud. And I was like, yeah, I did it. I managed to get there, and that's what attracted all the attention. Like, everyone kept coming to me and saying, wow, you look incredible. You've lost all the weight. And that's where I think the key word here, being incredible, feels like, okay, the only thing you are seeing now is just what I am on the outside. You're not even paying, not that necessarily people would have to come up to you when they compliment you on how you look. It doesn't mean that they're putting your whole personality away. But it just means that, they notice something different about you and they make a comment. But how you perceive that comment is something totally different. So when I wanted to avoid all those kinds of comments, that was when I felt like, okay, well, I don't want this. It's like, I want people to see the real me, and I'm not my body. It's a really hard thing. And I remember times where we'd been at a party and someone will make a comment about how I look. I would go home and literally stuff myself with anything I can get my hands on in the kitchen, just because I couldn't deal with it.
And I think as well.
Sorry,
it's almost a form of protection. Like, I'm going to stuff myself silly and kind of put a buffer zone there between you and me, just to immediately make my feelings feel better about feeling uncomfortable that you've noticed me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the actually the biggest wake up calls was around 3 years ago. So that was roughly when everything started going downhill. I was preparing for a bodybuilding competition. At the time, I've decided that this is something that I really wanted. I had started training, and I was training at times 4 hours a day. And when it came closer and closer to the competition, if any of your listeners, have experienced that in their life, it's like the exercise is ridiculous, the diet is ridiculous, and it's torture. I'm not gonna lie, it was one of the most horrendous experiences in my life. But I so wanted to get on that stage and show off how amazing I was, and all my dedication. It wasn't so much about the body, but it was about the dedication that I put into all this hard work. And I literally 2 weeks before the competition, I was like, what the hell am I doing? Why am I doing this for? It's something that I've been trying to run away from. That was when I became more aware of why I was doing what I was doing. And I thought, that's it. There is no way on earth I'm actually going to go there. And I didn't. And yeah, that was one of the best decisions that I ever did in my life.
Wow. And that's actually I think that is the most intuitive thing that you can do, is realize that even so close, 2 weeks out from the competition, and it's months and months of preparation of, cutting the food, cutting the weight, and really it takes a tremendous amount of tenacity and resilience and a strict, routine to be able to prepare for a body competition. So to get to that point 2 weeks out and realize, hang on a minute, what's my motivation here? Something's not right, and pull out. That's a very brave thing to do, but I also think it's a really intuitive thing to do. So what did you pick up on? What sort of came out from that whole decision to pull out? What were the next steps for you after that?
I think that one of the most important thing that happened then was I literally, it was a part where I looked at my body in front of the mirror. I was standing in front of the mirror so many times during the day, because you have to do your poses to make sure that certain muscles are showing up and all this. It was it feels like a totally different world now, it's just, and I looked at my body and I actually said to myself, it doesn't matter what I look like, I love you. I literally said to myself, I love you. And it was really hard. It was a really, really hard part, because when you grow up thinking that you have to constantly give something in order to receive something back, you don't believe that that you deserve anything. Even loving yourself feels wrong. And that part was I remember like waking every morning, going in front of the mirror, not naked anymore, like with my clothes on, and looking at myself with my bad hair, like, and say to myself, I love you. And this was something that really kept me moving throughout a day and day as I started. I didn't even go through like what a lot of people go when they after competition is like to slowly increase the food so you don't end up putting on weight. It was a point where I don't care. This is not my life. I want to be able to enjoy food. I want to be able to appreciate my body in any shape or form. It doesn't matter what it looks like. And I want to live my life happy. That was one of the most important things.
I think that what you've just said is what probably the majority of women are seeking, is to have that ability, that relationship with themselves, that they can enjoy food, they can feel comfortable in their body, and they can live their life without constantly stressing about what they look like and what they weigh. Yeah. Okay, so that was a massive step forward. When you first stood in front of the mirror and it kind of felt right for you to say to yourself, I love you, how true did that feel for you out of 10 at that first moment when you said it? Did you actually mean it, or were you hoping that you could mean it? Were you in that process of realizing that you don't love yourself and, okay, well, this is what I think I need right now, I'm going to try it out? Can you remember that first time, that impact? Because that's a massive thing for a lot of people. So many times I hear from clients that they don't even like themselves, let alone love themselves. So we really have to work on building their appreciation of self first, so that their like factor can come up, so that then we can actually start working on the love. So what was that like for you?
Oh, it was one of the most difficult things to do. And it's not easy, you know, for anyone who is trying to improve the love towards yourself. Don't give up just because it feels uncomfortable, because it will be. It's something that is completely out of your comfort zone. It's something that is totally different to what you're used to. But the thing is, the more you do that, the more you end up appreciating yourself. And it felt really awkward at the time, but I did it because deeply I believed it, and I wanted to experience what it will feel like when I say it out loud. Because sometimes, yes, you know, it might be in your mind and you might be thinking it, but when it comes to a lot of, build up years of self-negative talk, it's really easy, that kind of inner voice, to get thrown away. But all the negative self-talk that, will ultimately follow, and is something that will happen, is not inevitable. But the more you give it voice, the more you say it out loud, and you make it vocal and you make it real, then the easier it is to actually get to that concept, to start believing it. And it might not happen in a week. It might not even happen in a month. It will take time. As with everything else, I think the key thing is being consistent with it, and believing that it will get easier. As with everything else, it's kind of like building a new habit in your life, creating that kind of new thought process about yourself, getting rid of all the old limiting beliefs and creating something new.
I like that you brought up beliefs, because I think it's one thing to learn to believe that you are lovable, but it's also another thing to accept that belief as truth by also believing that you deserve to be loved.
Yeah.
For no other reason than because you're a human being and you exist and you're here, and you are lovable and worthy and enough simply because you're a human being. But because of those messages that we receive in early childhood that over time become our conditioned self-talk and our beliefs, so many people lose sight of those very fundamental rights, that they are worthy, they are enough, and they are lovable, and they deserve to have happiness and all those things that go with it. So that's so my question is now, from that point, after you had stood in front of the mirror naked, saying that telling yourself that you love yourself, and then consistently saying it with your clothes on, letting the body return back to some sort of normalcy with your eating pattern because you wanted to have that freedom and you chose that. What then? What happened then for you to be able to change the relationship with your body from what it was like pre-competition to what it evolved into after the revelation, the awareness, the answers, and the choice to move on, part of the healing process? What happened then?
I think it was, I allowed myself to have fun. As corny as it might sound, it was at the point of my life where fun was no longer in the picture. And when I mean fun, was like doing things that I enjoy. Because although I love training and I love, delicious, nutritious food, this was no longer the case. This was something that was taken away from me, and I no longer went out to socialize with my friends. I really isolated myself, and it became that part of life where fun was no longer in it at all. And it was such a revealing feeling when I started going out with my friends more, and this time I can go out and have a drink and not worry about it, enjoy myself. I can go out and have a cake and still, be completely normal about it. And I think that was the most important. I actually missed one, which was probably one of the most important ones. I actually sat down and had meals with my family, like meals like that I cooked for everyone else, because that was never part of what I was doing. I would cook for them, and then I would cook everything else separately for me. And I didn't even realize what kind of message I'm sending to my kids. That way, I've got 2 boys, one is 10, one is 5. And I remember the first time when I sat down with them to have dinner, they were shocked. They looked at me and was like, "Mommy, you're eating the same thing as us?"
Something different.
I thought, oh my God, this was, I didn't even realize at the time what I was doing. And, what were the boys growing up thinking? Why is Mommy having something different? Why aren't we allowed? Because that could go through their minds. Why aren't we allowed to have what she's having?
Yeah.
And it was like, this is actually fun. This is amazing. And I think the biggest part of when people go on whatever kind of journey in their life, when it goes through, when they go through a phase of changing who they are, that part of their life really gets put in the back, and it's no longer there. So I think that was my key momentum. Like, I started having fun in my life, and I started realizing that I could wear whatever I want, and if I choose to entertain myself, to be happy, to do things that I absolutely love, the outside shell really doesn't matter.
How did all of this actually change your attitude towards your clients in training them?
I remember, like, one of my closest clients, who also became a really, really good friend of mine. At the beginning, when we started working together, she actually reached out because she wanted to lose weight. And she had her baby girl. At the time, her baby was just under 1 year old. And she wanted to lose the baby weight. She wasn't happy how she was looking. And it all started as a personal training sessions. And the more we trained together, the more we realized that when we were having conversations during the sessions, the one thing that just kept coming up, where she kept saying that she wanted to look good for her husband. She wanted to look good for her mom. Basically, what she was describing was how much she was seeking approval from other people about the way she looked. And I remember that day when we actually sat down and I said, "Okay, Samuel, let's talk about what you want to do and why you want to do it." And I remember she looked at me and she said, "I don't want to change the shape of my body." And it was like, when she said it, even she couldn't believe that she said it. She was like, "Wow, that's like a really big thing, like, coming out of my mouth." Because her situation at the time was that when stories from her childhood kept pouring out. And it was one of the most heartbreaking sessions that we had when she remembered the situation where her mom put her on a diet when she was 9 years old. And she had grown up believing that she needs to look a certain way to be accepted. And it wasn't whatever, very similar situation to what I was experiencing. And that was where we started going a little bit more deeper into exploring how she feels about herself, working more on the gratitude side of everything that she's capable of doing, of everything that she's bringing into this world, and realizing what her potential is. Everything else, body shape and training put aside. And that was when, it was the biggest breakthrough, because she actually started doing things that she enjoyed in her life more. One of the things that we did was like, okay, so what did you enjoy doing when you were a kid? And she said, oh gosh, I love making mud pies. So that was on the agenda, and she started making mud pies with her little one. And that was the thing again when we brought fun back into reality, into life. And I think it changed me as a trainer as well, because at the time it was like, okay, well, we have this routine, we have our exercise structure, we have our nutrition structure, but what about the rest? What about, the rest of your life? How is everything else going on around you? And that's when, I started shifting my work with my clients. So it wasn't as rigid before as like, okay, this is the exercise regime. We do this X amount of time, X amount of days. It was more about, okay, you get to choose to do whatever you want to do. Because yes, physical training is still a big part, of our physical development and, well-being, but not to the point where you do it because you have to do it for a certain reason. You do it because you enjoy it, and you know that this is making you feel happier, healthier, and just feeling more fulfilled.
Because you want to do it. It didn't sound like your client actually wanted to do that for herself. She was doing it for other people, for the approval.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And once that started, it was like, okay, well, I actually really enjoy swimming and I enjoy play tennis. And these are other, ways of actually physical activity. So that was something that she started introducing more. And, it changed her completely. It changed her mentality around it.
I think it's wonderful to actually bring more of a holistic approach into training in the exercise field, because everybody always has an emotional attachment to the reason why they want to eat better, exercise more, lose weight, whatever the reason is. But generally a lot of people come and work with trainers because they want to get in shape. They want to lose weight, or they want to tone up, as they say, which really is just building muscle, losing fat, building muscle. So with that intention, I think it's so important to bring that holistic approach in, because then you get to actually understand the motivations of that particular individual and look at the other elements in their life that perhaps are not being attended to, and where they're not feeling fulfilled, that makes them think that, well, if I just change the way that I look, I might actually be happier. And that will mask the needs that are not being met in other areas of my life. Now, of course, it's not going to be a whole logical thought process around that, because most people sort of lose touch with their own needs, and they also lose connection with who am I as life takes over and they get busier and busier. So bringing that element in, I think, is a wonderful approach, because you can't just look at one level or one area, because it also impacts all of the other areas. So looking at the whole picture and asking them, what else is missing in your lifestyle, or when was the last time you remember being happy, or, what's the real reason that you want to do this? I think it's a wonderful approach. So with that approach that sort of changed, particularly that pivotal moment working with that particular client, how did you bring self-acceptance in?
One of the things that I'm a firm believer in is gratitude log. And it's something that a lot of people who work in a similar field like myself, advocate, is being positive towards yourself. And I remember the first time when we actually started working, when I said, okay, she was really up for that idea. But I remember her gratitude was all about other people, what had other people done for her, and that's what she feels grateful for. And whilst this is still great, but it kind of takes away the aspect of what you're grateful for in yourself. And that changed a lot. So even it could be something really silly or really ridiculous, whatever that might be, but something that is, bound to make you smile about whatever it is that, it doesn't have to be a rigid structure. For me, it was like I went through a stage where I dyed my hair pink and blue, and I still can't get rid of the blue. But it was like, okay, I'm actually grateful for how ridiculous my hair looks today because I actually love it. And it's just those kind of things, like silly thoughts that might go through your head about something that you like about yourself, because there will always be something that you should like about yourself. And making that until you get into the habit of actually saying this to yourself, maybe, just do it like a journal, like every night before you go to bed, write down the 3 things that you're most grateful for today. And then when you wake up the morning after, just read it back to yourself and acknowledge that, and start your day on a brighter note, on a, better belief about yourself and what you're capable of. So I think that's a very important part.
I have I have a mirror challenge that I often give to certain clients, and it's something that they do first thing in the morning, because so many people wake up, they go to the mirror, they're putting their clothes on, and the first thing that they do is, they look sort of, down at the body, surveying what the body looks like. Is my tummy smaller as soon as I wake up? How are my thighs looking this morning? All that kind of stuff. And the barrage of negativity it's right there, because it's the default process first thing in the morning. So that's when I ask them to actually really look at themselves. Look at themselves from a kind of more compassionate, self-accepting kind of view. And before the negativity begins to take hold, find one thing that they like about themselves. And for a lot of people, just finding one thing that they like about themselves in the mirror is very, very challenging. It's very difficult, because they don't like looking at themselves. They just see the bits that they want to change. So it's an exercise that over the course of a week, you find one thing that you like about yourself in the mirror first thing in the morning, and you write it down as, I like this about myself, and reflect on it through the day. But over the course of 7 days, you've got 7 new things, new perspectives of what you see when you look in the mirror. So over the course of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you've got potentially 30 new perspectives, 30 new things that you can now see and appreciate about yourself when you look in the mirror. And that starts to create a sense of self-acceptance by constantly challenging the view of who you think you are when you look in the mirror. Because unfortunately, as we know, we try and change our weight, size and shape in an attempt to make us feel better about who we are, to like ourselves more. Yeah. But unfortunately, we're still left with the same personality and the same character and the same person in our mind. So by trying to change the view of how we look at ourselves from the negative to, well, what's worth liking? What do I like about myself? And building upon that can really start to shape people's perception of who they are and what defines them. Because I think that it really comes back to not what other people think of us, but what we think of us.
Yeah.
And that's really
I think
hard.
Especially what you mentioned is, especially if you've been in an abusive relationship situation, family, that part is really difficult for people to do. And because it's when the only thing that you've been accepted for has been your body. Yeah. It's a hard concept to grasp. Or if you've been harmed in any way, that, comes up again. And unfortunately, me and you were talking about that last time, was about 80% of people who have been in abusive relationship end up in some kind of a bad relationship to food, to drugs, being dependent on those kind of things.
Self-abuse.
Self-abuse, any shape or form, whether it's through self-harming. So there is many ways where that manifests itself, but. So that's why it's amazing what you said about the mirror, and being consistent with that kind of thought. So this is the key thing, like being consistent. It will be hard, it's not an easy thing, but, try not to give up because you will come out on the other side. And, I don't want this to sound like in a way like, hey, look at me, I did it. But I'm here to tell you that there is a part of that process where you will feel amazing about yourself, because you learn that you actually, you are an incredible human being, and there is nothing wrong with actually saying this out loud and believing that you are, and you deserve to be on this planet because you have a purpose here. And even if it's just for you to be here, you have a purpose and you're here for a reason. And everyone deserves to be happy, and everyone deserves to feel incredible about themselves.
Absolutely, they do. For anybody who is struggling with reconciling past abuse, reconciling the negative belief about themselves that they're not worthy, they're not good enough, they're not lovable, they're not deserving, what would you say would be the first starting point for them to take that first step?
One of the things will be forgiveness, and that will be forgiving yourself. Will be the most important thing, because a lot of that's the worst part about someone growing up, with a lot of abuse around them. It's they feel that they deserve that, and this is a very here is another limiting belief that growing up believing that you deserve everything you got, and this was part that. It's part of you, and you can't throw this away. And whilst that might be true, whilst this is part of you, it doesn't define you as a person, and you are not your past. You're not what happened to you, and what others see. This was a very hard thing for me to accept, and I'm not gonna lie, it's something that I still work on, every now and again, because it still pops into my head. What other people do to you has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And it's all about how they choose to deal with a situation in that particular time. And we always, like, one of my clients said, but I was a really naughty child, and I deserve that. Everyone is not in their life. Do you know what I mean? Especially kids. That's how we discover ourselves, and that's how we learn about the world around us. But how the person in front of us chooses to react to that kind of exploration, it's entirely up to them. So being forgiven, more forgiving towards yourself, to realize that it wasn't your fault. I would say this is a very, very important part. It wasn't your fault, and it wasn't. And I know it's a hard thing to say, but maybe it's something that people need to be reminded on a daily basis, that what other people do to you has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
And I think it's another, a lot of times, and I think one of the hardest part that I actually had to face with my mom, funny enough, was when she said to me, "How can you still accept your dad? How can you still have a relationship with him?" And that might open up a whole other topic. But the thing is, I made my decision in myself to not be angry anymore, because anger was such a big part of my life, where it was taking over everything else that I was doing. And it doesn't mean that I'm excusing what he did. No way. There is, that was the thing that he did, and it was his, again, going back to his way of, doing things, showing his love, showing whatever he felt like. But if I keep having all those kind of negative emotions in myself, if I keep thinking, why did you do it? If I keep seeking the logic behind it, see, that's the thing, I would never find it. Because sometimes, things don't happen logically, and things happen because they just happen. And it doesn't mean, again, I really, really want to reinforce this, it doesn't mean by any means that this is excusing what someone else has done to you, but it's all about making that peace within yourself that, yes, it happened. It was horrible and horrifying experience, but you still got your life in front of you, and you can still change the direction of your life in front of you, because now you have the power. Now you have the passion and strength to move forward and put that to rest. And I wouldn't say put it behind, because it's still part of you, and sometimes it's difficult for people because they feel like, okay, well, if I let go of that part, it's like, where is me? Like, I'm letting go of so much time of my life and such a big part of me. Just put it to rest and allow it to stay there, and allow yourself sometimes to, you would still go back to that place. And I'm not saying that, once you make peace with it, you'll never think, why did it happen? Because it will. And it's your, just your inner child, sometimes talking and wanting to seek solution. But just being more compassionate, and that will help dramatically. I hope that helped and it answered your question.
Oh, absolutely it does. Absolutely it does. Holding on to the anger is going to keep you existing in the past, because that anger is going to resonate within the whole body and every cell of your body because of the thoughts surrounding it and the memories and emotions attached to it. So that is always going to have you existing in the past the longer that you hold on to the anger. So part of forgiving is yes, it's identifying that I am not responsible for what this person did to me. I didn't deserve it, I didn't ask for it, but I'm not responsible for it. I did nothing wrong. And giving that forgiveness is not so much for the other person. It's not letting them off the hook. It's not excusing or justifying what they've done. The forgiveness is for you. The forgiveness is for the person to say, I forgive myself for not doing anything wrong. And I allow myself to release the past and the anger so that I can embrace my future. And that's a very, very hard thing to do. But as you've shown through your own strength and resilience and willingness to bear this and share it with us, you have been able to move on from it. And yes, there are going to be days where something might trigger, an attachment to anger or something that might strike up an emotion in you. But the continuing compassion and self-love and acceptance of who you are now, that has helped you to move on and to be in a position to help other people. So thank you incredibly so much for sharing and talking with us and hopefully inspiring and empowering other people who may be going through this situation at the moment, whether they've had a similar abuse or not. Thank you so much for sharing for them so that they hopefully can have some inspiration to move forward in their lives as well.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Thank you for allowing me to be able to, hopefully help other women who might be experiencing this, because this is actually one of the first time I've shared this in public. I have made video released to my audience, but I've never actually spoken about this in an interview. And I just wanted to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this topic, because unfortunately it's not something that is widely spoken about, because a lot of the time women feel ashamed and embarrassed because to an extent they feel like, I allowed this to happen to me. But that's not the case. It's never the case. And the more aware we are of that, and the more we support each other as women to show that it's not acceptable, it's completely unacceptable. And always, like, one of my advice would be, if there is a little teeny tiny doubt in anyone's head that something isn't going right and something is off, and if you're a mom who you think that your child might be going through something like that, if you had that kind of suspicion, or if you're a person who is going through a difficult relationship and can't make the difference whether this is something that is normal or not, seek help. Always seek help. Talk to someone. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter whether it's a therapist, a coach, whoever it is, even just a friend. Always confide in someone, because being alone with your own fears, there is nothing worse than that.
It consumes you.
And absolutely. And the thing is, because if you don't know whether this is something that is right or wrong, then it's actually a good idea to have someone else there as an opinion to actually tell you, do you know what? This actually isn't right and doesn't feel right. And then you can change your life. But always, please, for everyone, seek help. Find someone, confide in someone, and that could be the life-changing part.
The fact that there's such an alarmingly high statistic that suggests women are being abused in their lives. What did you say? It was 80%, I think?
80% of women who go through abuse end up in a destructive relationship. It's about 25% of women, which means that in a group of 4, there is one woman who is going through something like that, and this is very scary.
Yeah,
this
that's
is
way
very
too
scary.
high. 25% of women is way too high. Is way too high. 1 in 4. Okay, for anyone who wants to get in touch with you, to connect in some way, to reach out for help, perhaps, how can they find you? Where can they go?
I am on social media. My name, Elena Terziyska. Surname is spelled Terziyska. It's a lovely, difficult Bulgarian name that I inherited when I, married my husband. I am Elena.Terziyska on Instagram, Facebook. You can friend me on Facebook. My business Facebook profile is the same name. Or you can visit my website, which is eat/nutrition.com. Send me an email. You can find all the contact details there. For anyone, who is still afraid to talk to anyone, reach out. I love to talk to anyone who is out there and seeking help. And if I can help in any way possible, I would love to. If there is one more person, I always say this, if there is one more person who needs help and I can help, what more can I wish for? So, yeah, if you ever experience any kind of doubt, whether you are in that kind of relationship and whether, to what extent you think this is affecting your life, get in touch, let me know.
Wonderful, thank you. That's so generous. And I hope that people who are in that situation do reach out, if not to you, to someone in their lives, whether they know them or not, and get that clarification to start moving forward and healing. Thank you so much for joining us. I will put the details of Elena's website and all her social media underneath this video so that it makes it super, super easy for you to find her. Thank you again, Elena. Thanks so much, everyone, for watching and for listening. We appreciate you, we love you, and we're so grateful that you've spent this time with us. Take care, everyone, and see you next time.